Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Gavinsky's Tutorials. Today I'm taking a look at Noises by Hainbach and AudioThing, and this is a very cool app. I really enjoy it. I've got 3 copies of any AudioThing app for iOS to give away to subscribers to the channel, and the details are in the pinned comment at the top of the YouTube comments section. So this video, I'm going to try and make it short. A lot of app releases recently, so I don't think I have time to make very long videos on stuff, and I don't think that you guys have time to watch them either. I will just mention, by the way, that my video on MolliLooper by MolliLabs from yesterday, that still has a bit of time before the winners are picked for the giveaway there, so go and watch that if you haven't. Okay, so I'm going to try and make this video as useful as possible. We'll go over the whole interface, listen to what it can do, check out some presets, but I definitely won't go through all the presets or anything like that. And one very important thing is I'll show you easily the fastest way to make your own banks, your own sample banks that you can use to make your own presets, because there's definitely better and worse ways to do that. I think that will be extremely useful advice, so I'll cover that later in the video. So first, let's just have a listen. Let's just have a listen here. So I'm going to press trigger. Now this is a preset that I tweaked. So one of Hainbach's presets that I tweaked. Now, of course, you could put all kinds of effects on this. So, for example, you could put something like MolliLooper on. And you could mix the dry and wet. Okay, so you could get these kind of glitchy, repetitive sounds. And filter them as well. So that's one thing you could do. Or put it through something like Replicant, also a way to give it a bit more structure. Or you could use something like GateLab by Audio Modern. And then maybe stick here a delay on. Mantis by AudioThing. Did a video on this recently. Or check this out. Brilliant app, Phonolith Cascade, a very unusual reverb. Right, so you get an idea there. There's a lot of different things that you could do. Now, let's just see, click in here, you can hear the original preset. And so you can hear that we can vary those presets a lot using the settings. Actually, I'll bring it up here again and just turn the trigger off. So this trigger is a really important button. Anytime you're wondering, why the hell have I not got sound? It's probably because the trigger is not on. Now the trigger can be set to free or set to host. So if you set it to host, then the host transport will control it. In other words, when you press play, it'll turn on. When you press pause, it'll turn off. That can be very useful, especially if you're running a bunch of these and you want them to be kind of synchronized in some way. Now you also have an attack and release for this. So see, for example, there it came on immediately because the attack was down very fast, but we had a bit of time on the release. So that's why it took a while to fade out. If we brought release down, okay, then we're just getting on and off immediately. So of course it's going to depend, but most of the time you're probably going to want not too fast an attack and release. Okay, so that's that. That's a very important thing. Anytime you're not getting any sound, this is likely to be one of the things. Of course, other things to pay attention to, your level control here, or the out gain. And another very important one as well, the filter. You know, depending on what you're loading in it, the filter might be set up in such a way that you're not really going to hear anything. Another reason that you might not get any sound and you could be a bit tripped up is if you turn off all of these things also. If there are no yellow lights on here, you also won't get any sound, even if the trigger is on. Right? Another thing that could be a cause of not getting any sound is if you hover with a mouse or if you press with your finger on these numbers, there are volume and pitch knobs. So obviously, if the things that you've got turned on, if the volume down here is turned all the way down, then even if the trigger here is on, you're not going to get any sound. So I think it's important to get those things out of the way first, because, yeah, otherwise it can trip you up. And especially this trigger thing, because things like, for example, the init preset trigger is not on by default. So when you're new to the app, it's easy to just sort of think, what the hell? Why am I not getting the sound here? Bugger this. No, it's always going to be your fault in some way. I mean, another thing it could be is that you've got some kind of bank loaded that's actually empty. So let's talk about what banks are in a bit more detail, what this knob is, and what these things at the bottom are. So basically what Noises is in general is a kind of sample player / manipulator with some effects built in and some very nice randomization features as well, which are super cool. Now, so these things here, each of these represents the fact that every bank, so we can click here to see what's in this bank. Okay, so every bank can have up to 8 samples loaded. You can give it a name, you can give it a description, you can import an image. Now you can use these to import your own samples in. Samples can be FLAC, they can be WAV, they can be a few other things. Those details would be in the manual, I can't remember now. Generally, I would be using WAV myself, or WAVE, as a lot of people call it, whatever. So you could, for example, also delete any of them that you don't want. In the factory presets, you could make your own variations on them by deleting something and loading in your own sound. You can also preview them by clicking on these. So that is brilliant. For example, one thing that I didn't really like about Flus, the app Hainbach did recently with Brambos, was that in the factory content, you couldn't actually hear what the original sound sources were. It was kind of a bit of a pity, I thought. So I'm glad that here you have the option to hear, yeah, what all the original sounds are. And doing that gives you, some sense of what's really going on. Now, if we look down here, you can see that actually at the moment only sample 3 and sample 6 are going to be triggered. So let's put on trigger. So if we look at this trip function, which is turned on at the moment, now we can turn that off and then we can just drag manually. And what we're doing here is basically cross-fading between these samples. Now you can see that one is turned down quite a lot. Okay, now again, we can use these to change the pitches of individual samples, right? So basically we're cross-fading between those. Now if we turn on trip, And if we have it set to pendulum and turn this fuzzy knob down, it'll just go clockwise and anti-clockwise. I bring this level down a little bit and the outward or the output gain. Okay, now let's say we just turn all of these on. Then now it's crossfading between all 8 of those. Now, if we want, we can also get rests. So for example, we could take down step 3 completely. We could take down this. I find these a bit annoying actually to drag when they're at the bottom of the screen. Have to drag them sometimes several times. Let's listen here. Turn the speed down a little bit. So you see here, you'll start to see that we get basically like rests because we've turned the volume down on some of the samples, but this dial is still going to those samples and it's playing them, but the volume is turned all the way down. If we have, you know, some volume on all of these, I can't even, what did I turn down? Okay, this one, right. If all of them have some volume, even if we turn a bunch of these off, we'll still always have sound. There won't be any rests. It's just that we're only cross-fading between sample 5, 6, and 8. Okay, so that's the pendulum mode. Now if we go to fuzzy here, you can see it's still going basically clockwise and anti-clockwise, but it jumps around a little bit. And if we go to random, if fuzzy's down, it'll just jump to random places. With fuzzy, it'll jump somewhere, wiggle around a little bit, and then jump somewhere else and wiggle around a bit more. Now we have the filter up here. We have various filter types. Let's just change the preset here. Okay, so we have the filter here. We click on filter type, we can change between different filter types and steepnesses of the filtering. We can control the cutoff and the resonance, and we can also use this trip as an LFO to modulate the cutoff frequency and resonance amount. Let's just change it to pendulum. Okay, so you see there, so we can have a positive modulation or a negative modulation. Oh. Now, this is important here. This is a soft clip control, so that's quite handy to have on as a kind of limiter in case things get too extreme. Let's change this up. You can see we also have sync or free for the speed. Okay, and it can go very slow, 0.001 hertz. Or then we can also have 64 bars. And we have, you know, normal, dotted and triplet times here as well. We can also control the phase. Okay, now here we have control over the number of bits and the amount of downsampling. In a lot of presets, you might forget that the mix is turned down, so you're fiddling with these and it's not doing anything. Then remember to turn up the mix. Another thing that can trip you up when you're playing with presets is if these are turned off. Oh, well, obviously then you're fiddling with these things, nothing's going to happen. By the way, on iOS and all of AudioThing's apps, if you long press, the knob will turn a little bit whitish, and then you get a bit more control. But in some places, like pitch, for example, okay, now let's say, right, double tap, it'll just go to default, no pitch change. But let's say I try to drag it down to exactly -12. If I don't long press, that's really hard to do. But frankly, even if I long press, it's also a little bit of a pain in the ass. But, well, it is what it is. Now, another thing, coming back to the banks here, if you press on this, you can delete a bank. And if you press here, you can make your own custom bank. But Apple file system being what it is, frankly, using this is really a drag. If you have a lot of different samples, you have a lot of different folders, you know, you go down, you find something, you know, select it. It's not a good example. Okay, let's get a pack from Swan here. So I've put that in, and let's say the next one I want to add another thing from the same pack. Click on Audio Share, and it's not there. So what I much prefer to do is not to make banks this way at all. So instead, let me show you something very important. Oh no, first let me cover one more thing in the interface before we go on. So the routing, we can change the order. Does the filter come before or after the bit crusher? Again, remembering that these both must be turned on, otherwise it's not going to matter what order they're in. All right, now, so files, so let's go to Audio Share, for example, and let me just take something here, say this field recording pack by Luftroom, which I would highly recommend, and it's for charity. It's only $5 or something. Let's go here, find, okay, look, this is a perfect one actually. This has got 8 recordings in it, right? And Noises can load 8 things. So what we can do here is we can basically just select all except this credit one. So now we've selected 8 files. Now, of course, you don't have to select 8 files. Okay, you can put less in if you want. And then go to More and go to Compress. So very important, you select the files, you compress them, you do not put them in a folder. If you do that, they will not import correctly. Okay, now let's just rename this Noises field or whatever. It doesn't really matter. Okay, it's just an example. Okay, now let me just drag it somewhere easy to remember, like downloads. And let me go back to Noises. Okay, now I go in here. Now, by the way, when you first get the app, you can download all the banks or some of them or whatever. You don't have to download everything. If you download all of them, it takes up about 1.6 gigabytes altogether, including the app, something like that. So anyway, we go to import bank, and then I'll just go down to downloads, and there we have that. And I just clicked on it, and you see there, it went in. And where is it? What did I call that again? Noises field, okay. So now I load this. Turn on trip. Turn this off. And play around with all the settings, whatever. And when I finally get something I like, then I can save it up here in the preset menu, right? So that is the process that I prefer to use for making my own banks instead of using this. This is extremely tedious. Now, what would be perfect is if this had drag and drop. You could use an app like Sample Crate, which is great for previewing samples, and you could just drag them in here. But unfortunately, because this is a Juice port from desktop and Juice does not yet support that, it doesn't have drag and drop, and it is annoying. It's one of the things I don't like about desktop Juice ports. And the thing is, there are actually ways around this because, for example, Audio Modern, when they brought out Loop Mix, it also didn't have drag and drop, and a lot of people complained about it. And eventually they did find some kind of workaround. I don't know how they did it, but it shows that it is actually possible for a Juice port to implement drag and drop, even if Juice themselves don't support it. Again, no idea how, but it's possible. Anyway, we've got that workaround that I just mentioned, so it's not the end of the world, right? That was pretty painless, the way I brought in that bank just now. Another thing you could do, and Dan, 7ape from the Audiobus forum, he mentioned this in a thread there. Also, for example, if you have Koala session, you can just export as a zip, and that will also be able to be loaded in this very easily. And if you have more than 8 samples in the zip, then I think this will just import the first 8 and it will ignore the other ones. Okay, now a couple of little things before we finish up. So we have a randomize button up here. Let me just let me change back to one of my presets here. Okay, R2D2 on speed, I call this. Whoa, no. Turn that down a bit. Okay, so we could randomize this now. Let me turn off the trigger a second. One problem at the moment. Unfortunately, AudioThing forgot to add a locking ability for the bank and also for the filter type. But I mentioned this to the dev, and hopefully, well, I mean, they're definitely that was just an oversight, so they're going to add that soon. But it is a bit annoying at the moment that it doesn't have that, because what it means is that if you randomize here, it's also going to randomize the bank, the filter type, everything. So you can't actually use this lock button to its full potential. But normally the way the lock button up here works is you just pick certain things that you want to lock. Like, let's say, for example, a lot of the time you might want to lock something like the level and the output gain. And you might want to lock filter type, but at the moment you can't. But you might want to lock, say, cutoff and resonance. And then, whoops, hang on. Okay, then you can randomize. Turn that lock off there. Put on the trigger. Let me randomize. So see, I can still adjust this manually, right? I can still adjust this manually, but they will not be randomized. So this lock feature is very useful. Now let's see what else we've got. I mean, here you can just turn everything off. Again, here, okay, download banks. We talked about that at the beginning. You can download whatever banks you want. Import bank. Okay, we just looked at that. Remember the important thing here. Don't zip up a folder. Only compress the actual samples. Export current bank. Global settings. Okay, MIDI to cut off, MIDI to pitch. We also got a setting here for pitch bend amount. Now I don't have a keyboard attached to this, so I'm not going to be able to show you pitch bend, but I can show you this. So basically we can assign notes on our MIDI keyboard to change the cutoff of the filter, okay, or change the pitch. So let's look at that. So let me just, okay, that'll do. Okay, so watch this pitch here. So you see that, right? So I can play the pitch on the keyboard. Brilliant, right? And that's also triggering the filter cutoff. So the lower I play, the lower the cutoff will be. The higher I play, the higher the cutoff will be. Okay, so you can have that doing both of those or just one. That's great, I really like that. Now maximum crossfade time, anything up to 20 seconds. Okay, here you can lock all parameters or unlock all parameters. So lock all parameters, this is useful if, for example, I want to randomize this, but I want to keep almost everything the same. And I only want to randomize one thing, like let's say the bit crusher parts. So then I would click the lock button and, okay, unlock those. And now when I randomize, whoops, hang on. It's only going to randomize the crusher. Okay, so that's why those buttons can be useful. Okay, and then we can quickly unlock everything without having to go back and, you know, do them all one by one, right? Pretty tedious. Preset, copy and paste. I haven't even tried this. Import user presets, export user presets. So this is great, right? That you can batch, import and export your presets. At least again, that's what it looks like. Haven't tried it. Online manual. And okay, this about thing here. So we've covered everything. So at the beginning, we looked at, using this with effects. Obviously, you can also do really cool things like just load a whole bunch of these and make kind of soundscapey stuff using several instances. So now I'd like to just quickly look at, oh, I think my mouse has died. Okay, let me see. Let me get my keyboard on and here's the trackpad. I'm really going to have to finish as well soon because I'm very low on battery. Okay, so we could change the pitch, and then it's a bit harder, so we could bring down the filter, or we could change the filter type, we could play around with gain and so on. Remember, attack and release will only affect the trigger button. It's got nothing to do with anything about the crossfading between the actual samples themselves. I'm going to use my fingers here. It's a lot nicer than using the mouse. If you see down in this routing section, just pressing one of these, any one will make them alternate. Let's change some pitches and volumes here. Now obviously you can do this with a lot more care, and what I'm doing here is just a very rough example. Okay, so you get the idea. You can change things a lot. And of course, change it. You could just pick in a preset and then pick in a random bank. Can also come up with interesting results. Change to a low pass filter. Raise the cutoff. Lovely, right? Play with the filter. You can really get some sweet spots. Okay, so I don't really like this number 7, so I'm taking that out. Okay, everyone. I think we've covered really everything. Most important thing, to be honest, here, I think is the tip about making your own zip files and remembering not to put them in a folder before you compress the samples that you've selected, and using the import bank button here. That will save you a lot of pain related to the iOS file system and the fact that this doesn't have a drag and drop functionality. Really enjoyable app, really enjoyable. Again, I've only gone through a few things here. If you want to get more of a feeling for it, go and watch Hainbach's video, which is maybe a bit lighter on the details of the interface and stuff, but a bit more inspirational and going into more examples of what this can sound like. My main aim in this video was to very thoroughly go over the functionality, and I think it was also very useful what I pointed out earlier in the video about some of the things that can trip you up if you find that you're not getting any sound and you're just sort of going around and twiddling around with a bunch of different knobs and still not getting any sound. Well, if you watched my section earlier, now you know some of the places to check what's going on to solve that kind of problem. Okay, everyone, don't forget to thumbs up and subscribe if you liked this. And remember, there's the video giveaway, the giveaway for AudioThing apps that I mentioned at the start. Follow the instructions in the pinned comment. And as I also mentioned at the start, I've got another giveaway that's still not closed yet for MolliLooper, which is a really nice little app, and it's only $5 that just came out yesterday. Do recommend it. So yeah, check that video out too. And see you soon. Take it easy. All the best.